what lengths would you go through to find a loved one? How about a stranger? This documentary explores the lengths people went through to find a man that they call mostly harmless. Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to discuss a documentary currently airing on HBO. The name of the documentary is They Call Him Mostly Harmless. So the documentary opens up with a camper finding a dead body. I'm going to play a little bit of the 911 call from the documentary.
Call your county 911. What is the address of your emergency?
I'm at Big Cypress National Preserve. We just found a dead body.
Are you on the trail?
Yeah, I'm on the trail, and then the dead body is at the Camp Noble site. It's in a tent, he's kind of curled up, like he's trying to get out.
And did you check on it to see if it was breathing or anything?
Yeah, I didn't touch it. I looked at it. We yelled, hello, but he looked really skinny and really, like a weird color.
All right, thank you.
So the body was found in Southwest Florida in the Everglades. The police noted that the body they found was very thin, but they noted that the guy had money on him and he actually had food. So they weren't sure why he was so thin, but just by that, they knew that he wasn't an indigent person or a homeless person. So the documentary switches over to Richmond, Virginia, and there we're introduced to Christy. Now, Christy is an internet sleuther, and she uses her computer skills to find missing persons. Christy later plays a key role in this documentary. So the police were unable to determine the cause of death. They did find out that he only weighed 83 pounds, which was weird to them because he did have food on him. So they didn't know if he was sick or what happened, but his body was only 83 pounds. They did a toxicology report, and the only thing that came back in his system was Tylenol. And they stated that Tylenol will stay in your system, I think they said about 2 to 3 days. So they know he recently passed. Now, they were also unable to find a fingerprint or a DNA match for him. So they created a flyer that included a composite sketch, and they were hoping that people within the hiking community would be able to identify him. Now, someone in the hiking community named Kelly Fairbanks, she actually made contact with him. And Kelly describes herself as a trail angel, and basically she goes along like hiking trails and provides snacks, goodies, essentials to hikers. She actually met the deceased 6 months before he passed away. In this part of the documentary, they show how big the hiking community is, which I didn't know because I'm not a hiker, but they show how big this community is, how much they care about each other, and how they look out for each other. They found out about 25 hikers had come into contact or had some form of interaction with the deceased, but no one knew his name. He kept his identity a secret. They did realize that he had been traveling along the Appalachian Trail. So we're introduced to Magpie. Magpie had a lot of interaction with the deceased. She said they bonded because he actually stopped to talk to her, and she said due to her age, she was a woman of a certain age, an older lady, she doesn't have much interaction with some of the younger hikers. They can't be bothered to stop and talk to her. So she bonded with the deceased because he actually stopped and held a conversation with her. And she said he was a good dude. Magpie stated that she knew him by his trail name of Denim. However, she never knew his real name. And she at one point asked him his real name, but he really kept his identity very secretive. So she never knew his real name and just called him Denim. And she said he got his name because his first, when he first started hiking, he was hiking in jeans, and in the hiking community, I guess this is a no-no. You need some type of sweat wicking material in order to hike. And so he got his name Denim just because he went hiking in jeans. This information was helpful to the police, so they updated his missing persons bulletin to include that he would have been a newer hiker in the area. Based on the revised bulletin that they put out, a business owner came forward and said he had some interaction with Denim. He actually sold Denim his tent. Unfortunately, Denim paid cash for the tent, so they didn't have his name and address, the information that you would have if he paid with a credit card. However, the business owner did give the police a tip and said he might have stayed at a hostel that was right next door to the business owner's store. He believed that he stayed at that hostel, and that hostel will not accept a trail name or a fake name. You have to use a real name. So the police got in contact with the hostel owner and looked up the receipt on that day of when the hiker stayed there. He stayed under the name of Ben Bellamy, aka Denham. However, they realized that this was a fake name, so this wasn't even his real name. He was still using a fake name. At this point, the police felt like there must be a reason why he used the fake name and kept his identity so secretive. And at this point, the police were willing to try anything in order to identify this man. So they released his book filled with code. So we're now introduced to Nick Thompson. Nick is a Wired journalist. Now, this was an interesting case for Nick because he thought it's almost impossible in 2020 for anybody to just up and disappear without some type of digital trail. And since he worked for Wired, which is a computer magazine, he knew he would be able to at least find out what the code meant. Nick was able to find out that the code was instructions to a game called Screeps, which is a programming game for programmers. People tried to find his identity through Screeps. However, the programmers who run the program actually protected his identity. So this ended up being a dead-end lead. So back to Christy. Christy is a monitor of missing persons Facebook group, and she wanted to do something for this hiker. She wanted to find out who this guy was. From this Facebook group, the cops received hundreds of tips. However, most of them were unuseful. The cops even had a podcast. They used that in hopes of finding the hiker's identity, but they were still unable to find his identity. So we're introduced to Natasha Teasley, and she was interested in this case and joined the Facebook group to help find him. Natasha and Christy ended up having some interesting interactions, and we'll get to that later in this review. We're introduced to another hiker, Brandon Dowell. Brandon Dowell met Denham on the trail. He says he had a lot of long conversations with Denham. He said Denham shared that he broke up with his girlfriend and then decided to hike on the Appalachian Trail. Denham also let Brandon know that he had a traumatic childhood. And Brandon and Denham related and bonded over this fact because Brandon also had a traumatic childhood. So they shared a bond after this interaction. Now, people assume since Denham recently broke up with his girlfriend and had a traumatic childhood that no one would be looking for him. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that Natasha and Christy had an interesting dynamic. Fighting ensued on the Facebook group. Christy ended up quitting and Natasha ended up taking over the original Facebook group. She took over as the moderator. Now, the interaction between those two ladies is pretty wild. They get very nasty and very derogatory towards each other. So it was really heated within the Facebook group. Now, the Facebook group was able to determine that Mike Gromley was one of the last people that had any interaction with Denham. Mike's trail name was Waterboy. He said he ran into Denham on April 13th of that year. And he noted at the time that Denham had a very large backpack. In that backpack, he told Mike that he had packed winter clothes. And Mike thought that was very weird because it was April, they were in Florida, so winter clothes weren't needed. And Mike offered to take the winter clothes and send them back to his home, but Denham wasn't about that. Denham said, no, I'll keep my stuff with me. I'm fine with it. So Mike just thought it was odd, but he let it go. Mike then told Denham about the Nobles campsite, and that is the very campsite that Denham was later found dead. So we cut back to Christy, and as I mentioned earlier, she uses true crime to escape her own reality. She ended up forming her own Facebook group and began to work the case of the hiker with no identity. Someone within her group requested the case file through the Freedom of Information Act. She said she was horrified by the autopsy photos that she found. She was horrified because he was so thin. As I mentioned earlier, he was only 83 pounds. They also felt that the police missed one of his scars. So the scar was noted in the original bulletin that the police put out. However, they said it was a small scar and it ended up being a very huge scar. So people in the Facebook group thought because of the size of the scar and the location it was located in the abdomen, they thought maybe he had cancer. So the people in the Facebook group Googled Appalachian Trail and cancer, and they came up with a guy named Ben Reynolds. However, they thought Ben Reynolds was the hiker with no identity, Denham, but they located him and Ben was actually alive, so he wasn't Denham. Ben did note that the sleuthers became unbearable. They would send him all sorts of email messages and DMs, and he would tell them, hey, I'm not that guy. Please take my word for it. And the sleuthers were harassing him, basically saying, how do we know that you're not this guy? How do we know who you say you are? And it's like, you found him. Obviously he's not dead. And if he's telling you he's not this guy, then he's not this guy. So he was getting harassed. So the Facebook group was going a little bit nuts. So we're now introduced to David Middleman and Christian Middleman. They focus on human identifications at crime scenes. They run a company called Ortham, and Ortham looks at more DNA markers than the typical law enforcement lab technicians. However, their test costs $5,000, and most police departments aren't able to afford that for every victim. However, Natasha's Facebook group was able to crowdsource the money and come up with the $5,000 in order to get the DNA ran for the hiker with no name. So back to Christy. Now, Christy is up to her antics, causing problems between the two Facebook groups. So I'm going to play a clip where you hear Christy and Natasha going back and forth.
And because of the history of abuse, that he may not have family looking for him. So if no one is looking for Mostly Harmless, the hikers were the only people we knew that actually had talked to this person. And I became obsessed with finding new hikers and talking to new hikers. But I was immediately told by Christy Harris that that was not something I could do.
I had decided that the hikers were pretty much useless.
Everything had to be done through Christy. Posts had to be Christy approved. Searches had to be Christy approved. If you want to submit something to Collier County Sheriff's Office, guess who you have to tell you're going to do that?
Sometimes you have to be the hammer and frankly not be nice to get stuff done.
She sent me a message and said, you should go fuck yourself. I've already heard from people that say they don't like you.
I was trying, in my opinion, to keep order. I can't get the job done of what I want to do if I've got blah, 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 Natasha's doing this, blah, 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 Summer's doing this.
The atmosphere was hostile.
I felt like...
So that's just a little bit of what was going on between the two Facebook groups. It was a bit of a mess. Christy was in this one deep. She took this very seriously. So somebody sent Christy a photo of a guy. It was a yearbook photo and it had a beard drawn on it. So it was really, really weird. And Christy thought that this guy was Denham, or Mostly Harmless. However, this guy ended up still being alive. After this revelation, she was shocked and kind of felt stupid because the picture is nuts. I'll try to find the picture and insert it if I can. She really felt kind of shameful. She did put all of her heart into finding Denham's real identity. So the DNA finally comes back and they find out that Denham has ties to Louisiana. So at that point, they bombarded every Louisiana Facebook group that they possibly could until they got a hit. Now, someone's husband that was in the group used to work with Denham, and his former roommate also hit up the Facebook group. So they solved the case, and they found out that the identity of the hiker was Vance Rodriguez. When the police got in touch with Vance's family, they didn't even know he was missing. He had fell out of touch with his family several years ago, so they didn't know he was missing. He had moved to New York from Louisiana and lost contact with his family. So the police did further investigation and found out kind of why he walked away from his life. They got in contact with one of his former girlfriends and found out that he was abusive. And actually several women came forward and said that he was very abusive towards them. They also discovered that he had some mental health issues. Now, the hikers seemed a little shocked. They said that wasn't his demeanor, that they didn't pick up that vibe from him, but how much can you really pick up? I mean, you just have one or two interactions with somebody. It's not like you lived with them and you really knew them. So we cut to the Wired journalist, and he has some great observations. He says, one, that Denham did a great job hiding his true identity, but two, since he was such a bad, abusive guy, that nobody was looking for him in the first place. So, take with it what you will. So in the end, they found out that the moniker Mostly Harmless came from a book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Based on his name, they, seem to think that this was one of his favorite books. Overall, Denham just had a hard time with life. He had some mental issues. He had periods where he would just shut down or just disappear. They also found out that the big scar that he had in his abdomen, it wasn't from cancer. It was from a self-inflicted wound himself. So he had a lot of issues. So they know why he disappeared. So that was the end of this review. If you have any comments, please drop down below and share them. And make sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.